מלאכי המלוכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. שלום עליכם מלאכי השורש מלאכי.
One of the key elements of our ministry as Jews is teaching the laws to the other nations, as it has been given to us from the beginning. This is the basic condition for fulfilling the prophecy of the grafting in and back to the olive tree. We often talk about the topics of how the commandments are fulfilled in Christ, what is their spiritual meaning, and how should Christ's body deal with them. In this writing, we will instead treat the subject of the commandments as they are interpreted and observed by the traditional non-messianic Jewish community when having neither sanctuary nor priesthood. As we already have stated many times, the law, which is immutable, has only been modified in its application. Since the coming of Christ, the application of the law passed from the hands of men into the hands of Yeshua, the high priest, according to the order of Melkishedek. Not long ago, I heard from a teacher in a synagogue that today the law must be interpreted on a spiritual level. Since there is no temple, no sanctuary and priesthood, all judgments are in the hands of the Lord. For a disciple of Christ, this information does not teach us anything new, because this is one of the foundations of our faith. What is astonishing is to see how the people confined under the veil is able to perceive the realities and truths that sometimes even the body of Christ is unable, or even worse, unwilling to grasp. I give some examples. Since 17 AD, following the destruction of the Second Temple by the Roman troops, the Jews do no longer offer any Holocaust. They consider all the commandments related to the offerings no longer valid until the temple is rebuilt. It is interesting to see that following the sacrifice of Yeshua on the cross, when the obligation to show offerings to the Lord has not only been abolished, but it has been strictly forbidden. Just as the body of Christ is doing, the Jewish community respects this prohibition since the year 70 AD. Personally, I ask myself the question if anyone still had the gust to make any offering in the temple following the tearing of its curtain when Yeshua gave up his soul. Matthew 27:51. Second example, as a consequence of the Roman diaspora, the order of the judges, the Sanhedrin, has been abolished. The institution that was established by the Lord when he spoke to Moses, and according to which an assembly of wise men was charged to apply the law, just disappeared at the moment of the exile. In modern Israel, several groups of Orthodox Jews have tried to restore the order of the judges on many occasions, but in vain. They have never been able to get along so far. Most of them are convinced that only the Messiah is able to restore the order of judges when it comes. Third example, the Jewish people are made up of three groups: the Kohens, the Levites, and the members of the people, the Israelites. The Kohens, who come from the tribe of Levi, but descending from Aaron, the high priest, took care of the spiritual ministry within the temple. They taught the commandments to the people. By their side worked the Levites from the same tribe. They also worked in the temple as assistants of the Kohens. The rest of the people was Israel. Yahweh therefore had manpower among the people, physically, psychically, and spiritually. The income of both types of temple servants are very precisely defined by several laws. Their living was based on parts of the offerings and holocaust they were allowed to eat with their families. The laws concerning the Kohenites are the most interesting, since they received even from the income of the Levites. The Levites were to give tithes and make offerings that went directly to the one besides whom they ministered. The Jewish community do still observe these laws to this day. They set aside the tithes and offerings that go to the Kohenites. However, they do not give them to anyone, but destroy them, as when women throw some of the dough into the oven before baking bread. They do not give the portion to the local rabbis, because we can never precisely know the origin of the people. I'm talking about nutrition offerings and tithes here. We don't throw money into the fire, of course. Those living in the Messianic age know that in the body of Christ, this triple constitution of the people has been slightly modified. The high priest, the Kohen HaGadol, is no longer human, but Yeshua plays this role according to the order of Melkishedek. It is he who fulfills the ministry in the sanctuary, which is the body of Christ. Thus, we must place all our gifts in his hands, so that he can tell us where to invest all our material donations. The veil. Unconsciously, the Jews continue to follow the same spiritual path that guided them when they left Egypt. The Spirit of the Almighty prevents them from sinning unconsciously and against their will. The Spirit of the Almighty, allied with the Spirit of Christ in one single Holy Spirit, passes through the veil. Since the Spirit of the Lord cannot be divided, he cannot order two different things at the same time, one law for Jews and one for Christ's body. Therefore, Jews cannot do anything against the will of the Messiah Spirit, since the faithful members of the chosen people are still living and acting according to the will of the Almighty. The Messiah is this famous angel of the Lord that appears on many occasions in the Bible and which accompanies the chosen people throughout its history. He led the people out of Egypt. He was the one who appeared to many prophets and other servants. He was present amongst the people and in the temple as a pillar of fire or cloud. He is the one who was already present before creation and in whose image man was created. This omnipresence of the Mashiach in the life of the Jews is so strong that the expectation of his coming is the fundamental element of the subsistence of their identity. Therefore, the chosen people knows the Messiah very well, having always been at his side. This knowledge is, however, strictly spiritual. The Jewish people have always rubbed shoulders with the Spirit of the Messiah through his leading, his miracles, and his relief. From the Word that became flesh, they do only know and recognize the Word, while still denying that it became flesh. In addition, the veil has a very special feature. It can hide, keep in secret. In a word, it can veil things. But it also shows all the other features of what it is veiling. The veil doesn't hide neither the shape nor the heat nor the smell of what it is covering. The question then arises that through the veil, how much the people perceiving and knowing the spiritual strength of the Messiah without being able to see it with his own eyes for now, but still having the promise of recognizing one day the Messiah in the person of Yeshua, is in a more critical situation than the other people, who basically does not have any veil on its eyes, but from which many have placed themselves under the veil of their carnal instincts, unwilling to recognize the Messiah. Indeed, many Christians do only use the Messiah until redemption and grace are granted to them, without submitting to Christ in order to be under the rule of the King. In what spiritual state is the Christian relying to the image of a bearded Germanic type half-god as the representation of the Son, when Jesus has long been King in spirit? Apart from vulgar cloths like the Shroud of Turin, there are many false veils within Christendom. Jews, on the contrary, can only imagine Yahweh in a spiritual body. There are those who will now have difficulty in seeing and accepting that this spiritual Lord appeared to us about 2,000 years ago in a physical body, and that he must even had had a bird, but definitely not on an Aryan face. Let's go on with Paul's words. that he himself quoted from Isaiah, describing this famous veil and the causes of its presence. For this people's heart has become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. Therefore I want you to know that the Lord's salvation has been sent to Gentiles, and they will listen. Acts 28:27-29. And also, we are not like Moses, who would put a veil over his face to prevent the Israelites from seeing the end of what was passing away. But their minds were made dull. For to this day the same veil remains when the Old Covenant is read. It has not been removed, because only in Christ it is taken away. Even to this day, when Moses is read, a veil covers their hearts. But whenever anyone turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And we all, who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory, are being transformed into His image with ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. 2 Corinthians 3:13-18. It was certainly the people's sin that led to such a punishment, but it is the will of the Lord that shows up. The Jewish people could not recognize the Messiah by the will of the Lord, with some exceptions mainly from the tribe of Benjamin. In order for the divine promise to be fulfilled, he had to appear as a Jew among the Jews and to minister mainly towards his people. The seed had to be sown among them so that the fruit spread throughout the world. The Lord has promised the Jews the coming of the Messiah at the end of the times. And so it will be. For them, that will happen once, according to the promise. However, for us, he will come back for the second and the last time. Thus the Jewish people is going to see the Messiah coming in his spiritual body. This was not the initial will of the Lord, but because of man's rebellion, he must sometimes change his plans. He promised the coming of the Messiah at the end of the times. The neglecting of other nations by the chosen people forced him to come sooner in order to go and gather them himself, so that they should be also saved. He was sent to save the Gentiles, for the Jews ceased to teach the word of the Lord to the other nations. Gentiles have always reacted with hostility to the teaching of the commandments. Thus Jews, having enough to be rejected, being expelled and persecuted because of their faith, have gradually ended up withdrawing into themselves. He also and especially came before the end of time, because the law, the commandments, were unable to justify and save man, even if the Jews would have transmitted its knowledge to the Gentiles. There is indeed a people who have been temporarily put under the veil of non-recognition of the Messiah by their own fault, and so by the will of the Lord, so that the other peoples can become the people of the Lord in the same way that the chosen people itself. Israel has become adulterous, but her fault will one day be forgiven according to the promise. Thus the time of other peoples, the time of the nations, has arrived. On the other side, Gentiles have had the privilege of knowing the ultimate truth in Yeshua HaMashiach since the very beginning of their ministry, having started through the word of the Redeemer. Where then are the gods you made for yourselves? Let them come, if they can save you when you are in trouble. For you, Judah, have as many gods as you have towns. Jeremiah 2:28. During the reign of King Josiah, the Lord said to me, "Have you seen what faithless Israel has done? She has gone up on every hill and under every spreading tree and has committed adultery there. I thought that after she had been done all this, she would return to me, but she did not. And her unfaithful sister Judah saw it. I gave faithless Israel her certificate of divorce because of all her adulteries. Yet I saw that her unfaithful sister Judah had no fear. She also went out and committed adultery. Because Israel's immorality mattered so little to her, she defiled the land and committed adultery with stone and wood. In spite of all this, her unfaithful sister Judah did not return to me with all her heart, but only in pretense, declares the Lord. The Lord said to me, faithless Israel is more righteous than the unfaithful Judah. Go, proclaim this message to the north. Return, faithless Israel, declares the Lord. I will frown on you no longer, for I am faithful, declares the Lord. I will not be angry forever. Jeremiah 3:6-12. The judgment of the unfaithful Israel and the perfidious Judah is not the same. Fault and sin are two different concepts, just as the sin committed in an unconscious and involuntary way are judged otherwise than those committed with premeditation, which are only pure rebellion against the Lord. He to whom the Lord has already offered the Comforter, the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of Christ and the Almighty united, can no longer afford to blaspheme either the Father or the Son, because from now on it will no longer be considered as a simple mistake made unconsciously, but as pure rebellion. When anyone falsifies the word of the Lord, laws and prophecies, in the name of the Holy Spirit, he presumably is not only rebelling against the Father and the Son, but more. It is very hard to remove all the good old veils we have draped ourselves with, because we fear the cold and the unknown, and we do not dare making the step forward. Yet it is the kingdom of the Lord that awaits us there, behind the veils of our unfaithfulness. This kingdom where no more storm, no more freezes do no longer threaten anyone. Our false veils provide us with a slight ephemeral protection, but are unable to save us when the final and great storm of the last judgment comes. The two peoples of the Lord will unite in one body only when the one who has the knowledge of the Messiah will be able to remove the false veil of the anthropomorphous God from its eyes. Only then will his testimony be of value to the Jews, who will then be able to recognize the Messiah in Yeshua of Nazareth, so that their own false veil may finally be removed from their eyes. Finally, let's go back to Acts. And when he had said these words, the Jews departed and had great reasoning among themselves. Acts 28:29. The Jews of those days were offended to hear that the Lord could abase himself to the pagans. But who are those Gentiles today who reciprocally go furious at the sight of a prophecy that is fulfilled, at the sight of the leaves starting to come out of the withered fig tree, at the sight of the elder brother, the prodigal son that is coming back home?
מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שלום עליך